wasp when you eat a fig, and I'm going to tell you why, and most people don't know about this, but it's such a fun fact for me that I love sharing it. Figs are not fruits, they're flowers. Let's start there. And the flowers are within. Let's start there. A wasp climbs through this little guy to lay her eggs, and when she climbs through, she loses her wings, so she can't leave. She lays her eggs, dies in there, the flowers decompose the body, so you'll never really eat a wasp. And then when these eggs hatch, they fly out, and they cross-pollinate to another fig when that cycle is ready to repeat itself.
Hi, my name is Angela. I am an expert on temperate fruit cultivation, and I'm so excited to once again get to debunk this myth about fresh figs. Absolutely no hate to this creator whatsoever, but I do get a little bit jazzed at the chance to talk about my actual areas of expertise and the work that I did before I ended up having to, like many of us, dedicate our social media platforms to fighting fascism in the United States. I have taught extensively about permaculture, design, and specifically urban fruit cultivation for many years. And I get tagged in videos about this myth frequently. It usually goes something like this, though. Did you know that figs aren't vegan? There's actually a dead wasp inside. And then someone will hold up a fresh fig that they either got from, their neighbor's garden or at the grocery store. And I know that this creator and many other people who perpetuate this myth are really well-intentioned. Right, and as a sustainable beekeeper and somebody who's really passionate about educating people around native pollinators, I think it's really awesome when people take an interest at what is pollinating their food. Now, if you are growing figs in your garden in the United States, or you are eating fresh figs at a restaurant or that you bought at the farmer's market, and you live in North America, those figs are not going to be pollinated by a wasp. That creator was correct that a fig actually is kind of a flower. What it really is a syconium, which is a packet of inverted flowers. That fruit develops parthenocarpically without the benefit of a wasp whatsoever. By the way, there is archaeological evidence that parthenocarpic figs are the first fruit crop that humans ever domesticated. That was more than 11,000 years ago in the West Bank, by the way. So those fresh figs that you may eat in the restaurant or buy at the farmer's market, those are what are called common figs. Now, I grow two varieties, Negrone, which is a smaller purple fig with a deep red inside. It sometimes produces 2 crops a year in my climate, a Breba crop and a main crop. I also grow Desert King figs, which are very large green figs with a light pink interior. I think they taste very much like strawberries, but with no acidity to them. They produce 1 crop of figs a year, and the figs, while very large and sweet, can be prone to splitting. You may be familiar with other varieties like Chicago Hardy or Olympian or the classic brown turkey. None of these have a wasp inside of them. None of them are pollinated. In fact, the wasps that would be required to pollinate do not exist in North America. And not only that, but all of those common figs in our gardens, they're all females. The male Capra figs aren't grown because they're extraneous, right? We don't need them to get the fruit. Sort of like how you don't need a rooster for your flock of hens to lay eggs. Now, there are 2 types of native figs here in the United States that do require a wasp to pollinate them. The strangler fig and the banyan tree both grow wild in North America, and there are native fig wasps that do pollinate their fruit. If you purchase dried figs that are imported that are either labeled Smyrna or Kalamurna figs, those figs, often again imported from the Middle East or Turkey, they are pollinated by a fig wasp, and they do require that you have a male Capra fig growing. That pollination process using a fig wasp is called caprification. Now, I do know that there are Kalamurna figs that are cultivated in Southern California, but most of us in the United States do not have the right climate and we cannot grow them. But overwhelmingly, these are those figs with the real crunchy seeds in them that you purchase dried, like the figs in Fig Newtons. But even if you are eating one of those Kalamurna or Smyrna figs, you're still not eating a wasp. Through the process of caprification and the maturation of that fig, there's no wasp left. I also think people hear the word wasp and they get the mistaken notion that it's like a yellow jacket-sized insect inside the fig. No, a fig wasp is teeny tiny. But again, just to reassure you, if you are eating a fresh fig in North America, there is not a wasp involved. That is not actually a real fruit. It is a packet of flowers that matures through parthenocarpy. There is no pollination. So I'm really sorry to take the wind out of that creator's sails. I do want to also address something he said toward the end of his video.
Another fun fact about these guys, when you pick them off a tree, there's a little liquid that spills out the top. You can kind of see it there. And that little liquid is latex that seals up the little veins on that vine to make sure pests and insects can't climb back up.
This is not quite right. Again, garden figs, they're not the same thing as a strangler fig. They don't grow on a vine. It is a tree. Yes, that creator is correct in that when you pick a fig, right, you separate it at that abscission layer from where it attaches to the tree. It can weep latex. Latex is not like a mysterious word. Okay, it is a cool substance. It's an emulsion, and basically it acts like a liquid bandage, right? When exposed to the air, it coagulates and kind of seals off a wound in the plant so that pathogens cannot get in. It's not really about preventing insects from climbing into the plant. It's more about preventing viruses and fungi. Now, depending on the plant species, that latex can contain some pretty nasty alkaloids. In particular, when we're talking about figs, they produce an enzyme called phycin in their latex. If you're picking a fig when it's very ripe and you know a fig is ripe, actually I have a whole thing on my blog about this. If you have a fig on a tree branch, right, it's growing off the tree branch and it's sticking up like this, it's not ripe, but the neck of the fig will start to droop and the fig will hang like this. I'm sorry, this is a very clumsy illustration. When the neck of the fig is drooping and makes a J shape, then it's ready to pick. And that abscission layer is already pretty well healed off. You'll pick the fig and there won't really be much white latex there, if any at all. It will often be clear. If you pick the fig when it's still sticking straight up like this and it's underripe, you'll get quite a bit because you've created a wound. It wasn't ready to be picked. That white latex contains phycin. If you prune a fig tree when it is not dormant, it will also bleed that white latex full of phycin. And I'm telling y'all, that shit, you can get the nastiest phytodermatitis from phycin. I found this out the hard way. When I prune my fig trees, I make sure they're very dormant. If I have to prune a fig tree when it's not dormant, I wear long sleeves, long pants, gloves. I protect my neck. I wear a hat because anywhere I get that phycin on me, I look like a boiled lobster afterward. It makes a very painful bright red rash. And I'm not the only person. A lot of people have a phycin sensitivity. So just be aware. And it gets worse when you go in the sunshine after you get it on you, right? It's that phytodermatitis. Don't fuck around with it. Strangely enough, fig latex is like a traditional folk remedy for warts. The thought is that you put that unripe end of a fig or you get some of that fig latex and that phycin will burn off your warts. I've never had warts, so I don't know, but I folk remedy, don't try it. Anyway, thanks for letting me ramble about this. I really appreciate getting tagged in videos where I get to talk about my actual area of expertise. I long for the day when I can go back to making permaculture videos and talk about, unusual fruit crops, heirloom fruit cultivation, beekeeping, sustainable food systems. So it really made my day to get tagged and get DMs about that video. And I'm sorry to have to be a buzzkill and correct people, but I think it's actually just as cool to know that the figs that we eat, there is no wasp involved, that they actually, like parthenocarpic maturation of fruit, I find fascinating. They go ahead and make food for us absent a pollinator. And you're eating like this super sweet, like delectable, figs have very little acid. They're just unbelievably sweet packet of like little tiny flowers, just full of goodness and sweetness and complexity. And you can grow that right in your backyard. And in my climate, figs have basically no diseases or pests. Birds will eat the ones that are way up high. I assume that 20% of my crop is going to be lost to birds every year, so I just grow extra. Okay, and with that, that's over 9 minutes of nerding out on figs. Thank you for letting me talk about this. If you want me to talk more about permaculture, please tag me in videos and give me a heads up because I'm down anytime.